What makes an ad memorable?
What makes an ad effective?
Does anyone other than Erik and Matt care?
Answers to these questions and everything their wives never wanted to know about advertising await you in this episode of Erik and Matt Like Ads. Hey, Matt.
Hey, Erik, how are you?
Yeah, we already talked about that before we started recording.
Yeah, we
I'm
really
doing
got
well.
we should probably stop doing that so that we have something, some small talk to talk small about.
Yeah,
Okay, maybe not. You don't like that idea?
I don't know.
Okay. So so this is going to be a
Bringing
cagey
it,
episode.
bringing it today.
Yeah.
Giving you
Did,
my very best.
did you have a rough week? Because you seem kind of aggressive.
No, you just bring that out in me.
Oh, good, good, good. I was hoping so.
No, I actually had a great week.
Good. I did too.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this.
Awesome. Well, why don't we dive right in then? Today or this week, we are going to talk about an ad.
What?
Are you surprised?
No, I'm pretending
No.
to be though. It's like entertainment value. This is all for the audience. It's for the kids. Doing it for the kids.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So today, I want to talk about an ad called Bike Wash. It's for Indian Motorcycle. I think it's a pretty interesting ad, and I think it's kind of timely, at least for folks who are in kind of the ad world and pay attention to new ads that are coming out. I'm curious if you know why, or why I would say that.
No, I actually really just want to make a joke about how I'm wearing short shorts for like a bike wash.
Oh, okay. All right.
You know what I'm saying?
Okay. So you didn't want a quiz or a riddle, or that wasn't a riddle. Okay. Sorry.
I really just wanted to put an awkward mental image in the mind of our audience. But yeah, I'm up for a quiz or a riddle. Let's do this.
Well, no, okay. So it's not a quiz or a riddle. I was just asking why you think I think this is a timely ad to talk about.
Because it's bike season?
No.
Okay, you tell me then. You tell me when
This was a bad idea.
Well, the podcast or
yes, in general. We're gonna stop it now. No. So you may have heard or seen the new Intel ad with Justin Long.
I heard about it.
Yeah. So he is now repping Intel. They kind of have done a spin on the 10 or however many year old Mac versus PC ad. It was kind of, so it's kind of like not kind of like the challenger brand, taking on the incumbent, Intel, not really a challenger brand, but kind of a little bit less in the minds than maybe Mac is or Apple. And I think that there are not necessarily some similarities from that ad to to the one that we're going to talk about today, but it is sort of like a shot across the bow, right? So I think that's definitely interesting. If you'd like, we could even watch the Intel ad as a bonus on this episode, if we have time.
How about a bonus on the bonus? Remember when Sprint did something like that with the dude? Like, can you hear me now, dude? Yeah, how'd that work out for them? They're like, yeah, or T-Mobile can just acquire us.
Yeah.
Oops.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll work out better though. You know what? I have faith. Let's be positive. This is going to be a great move for Intel.
Right. Well, you know that people purchase their computers because of the brand of chip that's inside of it, right?
the brand of chip that you, I guess, can't really get right now. Isn't there like a shortage of these things right now? Or is that a different kind of chip?
I don't know. I've used computers. I don't know really much more than that. I have heard that there's a shortage. Doesn't it have something to do with some sort of type of metal? I don't really know.
Maybe. I don't
I
know.
don't think.
It's something to do with the pandemic, though. Supply chain
Gotcha.
issues.
Yeah. I don't know that this is particularly interesting, so hopefully people didn't stop listening right then.
I think this is kind of like a train wreck, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
interesting in that way, you know, like I don't
Yeah.
know why, but I want to see how ugly this gets.
Yeah. What are they going to talk about next that has nothing to
Could
do with
this
ad?
get less entertaining? Wait. I
Wait,
think it
it's
can.
going to. Yeah,
Look, we can. We can do this, Matt.
If anyone's up to the challenge, it's us.
For sure.
Yeah. So, I think it's just something that's interesting that's happening right now. Anytime something like this, like these ads come out, I think it gains, gets a bunch of attention from the ad world and then makes very little impact on the actual world. And I'm actually prepared to sort of show a little bit of that a little bit later.
All right, sweet.
So what do you want to do?
I'm into it. I'm into it.
Okay, cool.
Should we start with the actual ad that is the premise of this episode?
Of course. Would you like to do that now?
That's probably a good idea.
Okay, let's get into it.
So you like that ad, huh?
I think it's a neat little ad. I think it has a couple of merits.
Me too.
A couple of maybe not necessarily missteps, but things that I would have maybe done a little bit differently. So, to start, I think one of the first things that you notice about it is obviously Willie Nelson. And I think if we don't edit it out, we'll see Erik kind of grooving along to it as it's happening. Are you a Willie Nelson fan, Erik?
Oh, for sure.
Cool.
I don't think there's such a thing as not a Willie Nelson
fan. Yeah,
what do you got against? How could you have anything against Willie Nelson? You got to be a fan of Willie Nelson. I feel like he's like, I don't know. Yeah, I'm a fan.
Cool. Yeah, and I mean, really, I think it's obviously a very strong song choice, and I think it works in, obviously a couple of different ways. One, it's familiar, so if you see this ad a number of times, you're going to be humming it, and then you're going to be thinking about Indian motorcycle, or at least motorcycles in general. And then, it plays well to kind of the ruse, right? That this ad is. It's you think it's going to be an ad for Harley because you see the guy, he's about to get on the road again. It's bike season. This is exciting. He's cleaning it up for the season.
And it's a Harley. He's cleaning. So I mean,
right? You're right to assume, right?
Yeah, which is great misdirection.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I almost wish, so this is one of my things where I maybe would have done something a little bit differently. The bike itself is very clearly a Harley without actually seeing, like the full pan out of the Harley. You see the Harley Davidson logo. I almost would prefer not to see that because I think it's just unnecessary. Like, you already know that it's a Harley. Maybe they were worried that there would be some people who didn't know that it was a Harley, but I think that's pretty rare. And really, if your target is somebody who wants choice in American motorcycles, they're recognizing that as a Harley. They could probably tell you exactly what Harley that is. things, you know, I can't,
Yeah.
but, you know, so that's one little thing that I might have done a little bit differently on this one. But, you know, keeping on with some of the positives, I think I love the end where they give you just a glimpse of their motorcycle. This was, or at least my understanding of it was, you know, during Indian Motorcycle's relaunch, you know, and I would imagine, or at least I would have placed this as kind of like the teaser, right? The first glimpse that you get, because that really leaves you wanting more. It's, you know, it's what you don't see that's so exciting. And if you're trying to drive people to check out the bike, check out the specs, check out the, you know, everything about it, I think that adds just a certain, you know, motivation to go in and like search Indian motorcycle on Google and, you know, find a dealer and everything like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I say, like, yeah, I've heard it said, you choose what to lose.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's not what you show or say, it's what you don't show and what you don't say that is compelling, mysterious, you know, allows the viewer in this instance to draw their own conclusion or imagine something, right? So I agree with that. Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, there's always the fear, I suppose, in, you know, in me that as a challenger brand, you're just giving your biggest competition just more screen time. You know, I don't know if that's the case here, but that's sort of a little bit of how I feel about the Intel thing, to relate that back to that. You know, they're showing, you know, and here's a new MacBook. It's like, people understand that, you know, Apple does things a little bit differently than these two-in-one PCs. You know, you get a MacBook and you get a iPad, right? So, not to make it all about that. What do you think?
I think, yeah, well, I mean, to that point, I think it shows confidence, right? And also, I think the concept kind of like, I mean, well, that's the concept though, right? But I get, you know, the fact that, I mean, let's face it, they're dealing with people think the standard is Harley, right? So they're owning that, which I think is great. That's positioning, right? They're saying what's already in the mind of the consumer, the standard is Harley, right? Great. Okay, let's work with that. Let's use that energy to our advantage. And they do the thing. So they're building it up. I love the detail. He's using Q-tips.
Yeah.
I love that because that's like the kind of persona of the enthusiast and like, you know, that attention to detail and every little aspect, and you're going to clean it with I said toothpicks. Did I say toothpicks the first time?
Nope. You said
Q-tips.
You said Q-tips. They do use a toothbrush, I think, at one point.
Yeah. So, so I love that. I love the detail. I think it says that an Indian motorcycle owner also cares about the details, right? By doing that, because, and then of course it's, they set it up with the misdirection and then they knock it down with the for sale sign, right? You know, and it's like, whoa, wait a second. You're selling the Harley? Well, you're selling the Harley to get an Indian motorcycle, you know? So I think that's, it's aspirational, right? So I love that. And as a challenger brand, you're going to do something that's, I think, is bold and aspirational. So I think that that is aligned in that respect. I think that I agree with you. The not showing of you know, their bike, I think is a good move. Pique curiosity. I think the choice of Willie Nelson is interesting, and I am probably overthinking this and reading into it too much. But I think it's not just the song that Willie's singing; it's the fact that it's Willie Nelson. One, because of the association, I think, and just that Willie Nelson, right, is so likable, right? So like to associate him with the brand, I think is great. But also, I mean, Willie Nelson comes from a specific genre of country music. He's not just country music. He's not just, he's outlaw country. Like Willie's kind of like that original
Sure.
set of like outlaw country, right? Willie Whalen, Merle Haggard, Johnny Cash, David Allan Coe, that whole thing, right? So to kind of, say if you're really kind of an outlaw, you don't actually ride a Harley. If you ride a Harley, you're doing whatever. And there's other commercials that I know we're not going to watch now, that I came across when we were talking about this one, that there's that one where they're at the crossroads out in the country, and and all the Harleys are going, that whole sort of thing, like, so you're basically saying they're going a different way. You're not going the way that the Harley owner goes. You're kind of in a different pack, so it's definitely a tribal kind of thing that they're tapping into there. And I really, and that's not on the surface of the ad, but a lot of times these kind of like, I think cool, things aren't necessarily on the surface of an ad. They're kind of baked in somewhere underneath the surface. And so I thought that was, again, whether it's intentional or not, I think it's pretty cool that they were tapping into the cultural aspect of that. I thought that was pretty cool. And I did a little home, because, I'm a nerd. Like I like to do the homework a little bit. And so Indian was purchased by Polaris 2011.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So Polaris owns them. Polaris is out of Minnesota. Indian was actually originally manufactured from like the 20s through the 50s. Elsewhere. I think they're making them in Spirit Lake, Iowa now, but they were from Springfield, Massachusetts. So I think that's interesting, right? So Springfield, Massachusetts, when you think Rebel, when you think motorcycle, you think the open road, you think Springfield, Massachusetts, right? I don't know why Springfield, they founded it there, whatever. And they don't bring this up here, but I think what also I thought was interesting is Indian is though on and off, the oldest U.S. made motorcycle manufacturer. They have got Harley beat by 2 years. 1901 for Indian, 1903 for Harley.
And I'm sure they would trade those 2 years for all of Harley's market share.
I'm sure they would. Yeah.
It is interesting, though. It is interesting. I do know a little bit about Indian motorcycles, not nearly that much. I didn't really look that into it. I believe they also made bicycles, right? Like before.
I don't know that, but I think that
I feel like that's something
sense.
I feel like that's something I've seen on like American Pickers or something like that. Okay. Right. I don't know if you're a fan of that show. I used to be a little bit.
I want to say a fan, but yeah, I mean, if it's on, I'd watch it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I'm
more of an Antiques Roadshow,
there you go.
kind of guy.
You do have kind of a PBS vibe, don't you?
I love public broadcasting in any form.
Oh, yeah.
Any form. Power to the people, part of the people.
Yep. I just bought an NPR hat yesterday. No lie.
Did you make a pledge?
I feel like buying the hat from them is the pledge, right? Like supporting them.
Good for you.
Needed a new hat, and I was like, what would be dorky? I was like, NPR hat. I've always liked their logo for some reason. Anyways, so with this Indian, it got me thinking. Because of this whole only showing, giving a glimpse of the bike. I was like, I wonder if that worked, right? Like if there were more searches of Google, for that at that time, if there was a spike that, would be measurable. And I don't know if you know this about me, or if anybody knows this about me, but I am a little bit of a data nerd. So I decided to take a look. And so I went back to 2009. That was kind of an arbitrary decision. Interest over time from Google. And obviously there were some people looking, at this point. I don't believe they were even making Indians. I assume this was, people looking for used or, remarketed Indians. And then you see right here, nice big jump. And this is right around the time that this campaign was launched. And you can see, a steady increase over this time. And a lot of these, and you're about to see a better example of these, dips and, peaks and valleys really are just like the seasonality of the interest, right? People are more interested right now in motorcycles than they maybe are 3 months ago.
Sure. That makes sense.
So then that got me wondering, how does Harley Davidson compare? And has Indian taken anything away from Harley? And I think the pretty clear answer is not really.
Not a damn bit.
But this also got me interested. Looking at this, seeing, well, what is this? It's going down, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, and can you attribute it to this? Probably not. No. So like that's not good enough for me. So I was like, okay, so which, is there a motorcycle brand that is taking this, right?
Yeah.
So I look at Yamaha, Kawasaki, and Honda because those are really the only three that I can come up with. Maybe so Suzuki, but so if you're looking at this, we're seeing the same kind of trending down, and then this is just with Harley in there with all of it.
Yeah.
So you can still see even Honda, which is the clear winner of these three brands or these four brands, right? Like Harley is still kicking everyone's ass. Is this signaling kind of like a waning interest in motorcycles in general? I don't know, but if you add in just the broadest term, motorcycle, you see a similar wane. So I don't know if this was particularly interesting for anybody that is listening, but it's certainly interesting to me.
Well, it makes you start it makes me start thinking like, okay, what's going on here? What could be happening? I noticed you didn't look at the trend for rollerblades. I mean, maybe it's just a matter of mode of transportation now. Maybe rollerblades are skyrocketing, and therefore, because you don't really get the same effect to your calves, and nor do you get to show them off, which brings me back to my earlier comment about the short shorts and the bike wash, sort of thing, which also would have been an interesting way to make this commercial really pop. I feel like, right? Like add a little sex appeal. All right. Let's get this guy in some short shorts, maybe like a tank top or maybe one of those mesh belly shirts, right? And have him working with the Q-tip and whatnot. I feel like, sensualize it a little bit, and that's not everybody's cup of tea, but we know that sex sells. But no, it does make you wonder, like, is it a generational thing? As boomers are aging out, right? Was the motorcycle more of a boomer convention kind of thing? And is there less of that happening now? Does our generation, Gen X and kind of the older kind of side of the millennials, are we less interested in motorcycles, perhaps as a mode of transportation? I don't know, but I also wonder, like when you're saying, okay, well, the Indians, revival, resurrection, whatever you want to call it, and then marketing, didn't really have an impact. But like, is that the point? Are they trying to get people that drive Harleys to drive? You don't drive them. I'm sorry. This shows my ignorance. Ride. You're not driving this. People don't like to drive them. Well, you don't drive them. You ride them. But those that ride them, maybe it's just it's like when we, let's say, craft messaging that reinforces a worldview and an identity. You're not changing the mind of someone else. You're simply reinforcing to the person that already agrees with you, right? Like you're not switching tribes. You're not all of a sudden, you're saying, no, you're in the right tribe. And if you're in this tribe, this is the bike that you should ride, right? And so maybe you see an increase in people riding your bike, but then it does make you wonder, like, well, wouldn't that have some effect or impact on the sales or interest of someone else's bike? Because there's only so many people that are going to buy bikes, and right. If you're selling more of them, probably that means someone else on some level is selling less of them, right? But right. Then again, this is where we get into the area of marketing that I am not the expert in, right? It's outside of the messaging and that sort of stuff. And we're not working quite on this scale with the kind of things that we work with,
sure.
So
sure.
Don't really, this is really me speculating now and bullshitting a little bit to make it sound interesting and intelligent.
Speculation and bullshit, both interesting things. I think it's entertaining. But no, and I think you bring up a good or an something interesting. Is this actually are they able to take sales away from the incumbent? If somebody's buying the Indian more often than are the rest of them, and that's not going to be seen in Google Trends, right? Like that's just right. Search. This could actually have meant absolutely nothing. So congratulations, listeners, you've wasted your time.
You've learned nothing. But right, thanks for tuning in. Next week.
But I think the overall theme here is, or the overall lesson here is, by focusing on the competition, are you maybe doing yourself damage by not looking outside of that tribe, as you mm-hmm. call it, right? Looking outside for new buyers, and that's not to say that you should be chasing every trend, every generational, like, oh well, we got to figure out how to appeal to millennials, and we got to figure out how to appeal to Gen Z or whatever. But I think if you see that as a category, people are losing interest, I think you can do a lot of things to reignite that interest, right? And I'm not really prepared to speak on it with any semblance of intelligence, but back in the 80s, Campbell's did a really cool campaign, and it was just soup is good food, right? I think it's a pretty famous, pretty well-known campaign. They weren't trying necessarily to get you to buy Campbell's soup because nobody was buying canned soup at the time. They wanted to get you to the aisle, right? And the rising tide raises all ships, sure. Yeah. Type of thing. So I wonder if there is an identity crisis, not just with Harley Davidson or Honda or any of these brands, but with the category as a whole, and if they need to really kind of focus in on something else.
Yeah, no, that's totally possible, and I wouldn't know. How about the name of the manufacturer in 2021? If they're not taking heat yet, I bet they're somewhere not far down on the list. Not only is the name of their brand Indian, their models are Scout and Chief and whatever else. I don't know enough about them to know. I didn't study that hard. What do you think about that, Matt?
Big question.
Notice how I ask a question and have you give your opinion first.
So I think as a brand, you have to be concerned by that, right? Because that's all you, like, isn't that all you have, right? That's the reason Polaris bought this brand that was defunct, because you were trying to take that brand equity and turn it into a challenger. If I'm the CEO or the decision makers over there, I'm worried about it. Whether or not they are, I don't know.
You think they just
As
kind of like
far
roll the bikes kind of back into the garage for a little bit? They're like, we're just gonna just lay low, just stop the social media. Let's not really make any noise here, and maybe the moment will pass, and we won't need to go through the pain of having to
I think
change all this.
I think at that point you're like laying low for another 50 years,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Or
Yeah.
I don't think that uh, the attention that names like that are getting is ever going to go away. So yeah, potentially it's something that I'm sure are talking about, or probably are talking about. Um, hopefully they're considering it. As far as my own morality or towards that, I grew up a Cleveland Indians fan. So there is some, it's tradition, but if your tradition hurts somebody, is it really a very good tradition?
Yeah, right.
So uh, I can live without the Cleveland baseball team having that name. I think hopefully Indian motorcycle enthusiasts can live with the history and move on from it. Do I think that will ever happen, or at least go easily? No, of course not. I mean, there's if you've seen the news in the last 10 years, that people have opinions, and even when it makes them look very bad, they are willing to die on that hill. So
Oh, sure. Yeah.
so what do you
Well,
think?
we'll see. No, I think I'm in line with you. I think it's I mean, it's unfortunate. You're right. Everything you said, like if your tradition, or hurts somebody else and hurts like a lot of people,
Right.
then that's a problem, and you
Yeah.
need to own that. And I guess it's unfortunate in a way that it it causes that kind of impact to a brand that doesn't intend it.
Right.
Right, like the polar, the people that I'm sure they're not intending that, right? The people that ride them are not intending it, right? This is not a matter of I'm doing this as a symbol to just make sure that we reinforce this bad part of our American history,
Right.
right? Like and to keep a population down. They're not doing it for that reason. So that's the unfortunate part, but unfortunately, like the truth is the truth, so
Yeah.
like you got to deal with it, right?
I,
So
and I would maybe back up a minute and say, like, I think the unfortunate part is that the name of it is hurting somebody, right? Like,
well, I think that's obvious, right? I mean,
yeah,
I think that's obvious, right? Like, and it's
I just
not
want to
just like
point
that
it
the
out there
names.
before we,
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, we don't want to misrepresent, right? We're not,
yeah.
um
All
we're not here to.
those poor white guys on motorcycles.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I'm not here to
I know,
defend that, right? And you right. Let's make
and I
let's
wasn't saying that
make
you
that
were.
clear. Yeah. Oh, we know what you were saying. No, it's good. You should say it because things are easily twisted nowadays, and we
Yeah.
want to make sure that the record is clear. Um, yeah. No, what's really unfortunate is the history.
Right. Yeah.
Like that. But what's really unfortunate, and this is not to take the light off of where it should be shining now. But what's really unfortunate is like that what we humans do to other humans and have done since basically we can, as far as we can go back, right? And so there are things, and I should have prepped more for this part of it. There have got to be things in our culture that represent tragic events, ideas, movements that, because this is now turned on to us. Before, what we were blind to just years ago, right? What we were blind to years ago, all of a sudden we have opened our eyes to, right? And so all these brands are changing course as a result of it. What still exists inside of our culture, right? That like for example, like let's stick with this for a second. Native American tradition, right? How many roads? especially in our area, right? But I'm sure it's true
Yeah.
throughout how many roads, rivers, lakes, bridges, mountains. I mean, you keep going, right?
Places.
We've appropriated all of
Yeah.
that, right? And those are all reminders, right? And so is there a positive in that? Is there like is that almost like, well, but you're also honoring the history and the tradition of the goodness of that? And I guess from mountains, roads, bridges, except perhaps ones that have tolls, you're not the brands profit from it. That's the thing, right? Brands, sports team, they profit from it, right? In those instances, you're not necessarily profiting from it, but it's still a reminder of the prevalence of that part of the culture, but the massive absence of that culture in the same way, right? So, and I'm also talking not from a place of deep understanding and close proximity to the culture, right? So, so again,
it's certainly a question that we both can't answer as two white dudes, right?
Yeah.
I think the best that we can do is be a part of kind of the change and have the conversation with each other, and maybe listen to people in authority that have an authority on it, the Native Americans, or depending on the issue that you're speaking of, the minority itself, and right, like all of these streets, the Skajakwada, like I don't know the history behind that, but it does feel a little gross, to use a terrible term, that it is likely on land that was taken from a people and then named after them. That doesn't really sit too right with me. It's something I've never really thought of. I also don't know, right? And I don't know if that is a bad reminder to those people or not. I don't have that answer, but
I mean, if you take it and you turn it around and you use it as a positive reminder, so that perhaps, let's face it, like humans, we're going to do it again some other way. We're doing it again right now. We don't even know it, and we'll figure it out, right? Like it's going to keep happening, because that's, I'm not to be nihilistic, but like, let's just say that we have a pretty consistent pattern, right, of underappreciating, devaluing others for our own personal benefit when it is convenient, and then pretending like it didn't happen, right? So I don't hold out a ton of hope that we as a race are necessarily ever going to, quote, get our shit together in that respect, right? The human race, that is. But I don't know. So these of course, though, are weightier things than will be solved in a podcast about advertisements. But it does go to show how advertisements are part of culture. They reflect culture, right? And that they can motivate action in many different ways, and not necessarily always how you intended them to.
Right.
Or good, and always not so.
So I think that is a very nice point, and a very nice point to leave off on. With that, I want to say thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this discussion.